Hi, I enjoy photographing wildlife in a variety of ways. I enjoy stalking things on foot, car window photography, nature reserve photography, foreign travel. Wildlife is often a lot more approachable abroad than it is in the UK. But there's no doubt about it, my favourite way of photographing is from a hide. I always have done, be it a temporary canvas hide or permanent wooden hide. It's what I enjoy the most. And I always say, you see more wildlife the less you move. So if you're just sitting down out of doors, you'll see a lot more wildlife than if you walk about. And if you're sitting down inside a hide, you see even more. So this is not one of my hides, it's a wooden hide and it's a private hide, it's not on a nature reserve. But I've been here for 3.5 hours this morning, really enjoyed it. It's a bit cold and the wind's coming through the gap, the wind's blowing this way. But it's been very productive. There's been brambling coming in. It's been a good year for brambling. The winter of 2021-22, been good numbers of bramblings in the UK. And this has been my second opportunity to photograph them. So I'm just going to show you some of the pictures that I've been taking this morning. We'll start off with a female blackbird having a good bathe. There was a lot of blackbirds around because they put fruit down on the floor. I quite like that one because it's on a thinner branch. That one is a thick branch and it gets too much in the way of the bird. And I'm not that keen on this picture because the feet are missing. I'd rather it came right on top of the log to show the feet. Also because the sun is shining, it's rather contrasty and you see the streaks in the background, especially the one behind the bird's head. Now the light is more overcast, it's the same background, but it just looks far more pleasant. Generally speaking, cloudy bright is often the best lighting conditions. Sometimes you want the sun shining, especially for birds in flight. Collared dove, again the sun was shining so the background's a little bit messy, and then more subdued lighting. Don't get collared doves coming to my own hides anymore, used to. But like so many other birds, they've disappeared. I quite like this cock pheasant in the background. I liked all the bracken all around it. And I deliberately zoomed back to put it slightly smaller in the frame. And siskins were coming down. Another bird that doesn't come into my hides anymore. And a chaffinch, very similar to the bird that I was really after, the brambling, and they often go around in mixed flocks. Well, this is a male chaffinch. But this is the bird that I've come to see and photograph today, the brambling. It's a winter visitor to the UK. They have bred here occasionally, but they can in some years be very, very common during the winter months, and this winter has been excellent for them. This is definitely a male, black head. It goes even blacker, and I've seen them in Scandinavia, Norway in particular. It's a very, very black head once we get to about April. I've seen them singing in Norway too. That's something I'd like to be filming, a singing brambling. It's not always that easy to tell the females, but that's still a male. It's the juvenile males that can look very similar to the females, but these are all males up to now. That nice black head. I have had these come into my own hides, but not very frequently. And this was probably my favourite picture because it's on a nice thin branch, which I tend to like. This is a different location for brambling. We're on the edge of a woodland in a public car park, and people have been feeding the birds here for decades. I first came about 10 years ago, and I can remember I met an elderly gentleman who gave me the impression he'd been feeding the birds here for a long, long time. And most winters there's usually brambling, but 2s and 3s, not very many. This year there's a flock, maybe 100 birds. difficult to get individual shots. They don't land on the branches here very much at all. They go straight down to the floor. The floor's very messy because too much food down on the floor really. But I've been concentrating on trying to do a flock shot as they take off. And Bramblings have got a white rump, and I just wanted to show the flock going up in the air in slow motion. There's quite a few females amongst this flock, and this is one, far more subdued colours. That last clip of the Bramblings taking off didn't really work out. It was all over too quick, even in slow motion. Now this year on the internet I've been seeing lots of pictures posted of large flocks of Bramblings, several hundred birds. That's what I want. A flock in the middle of an open field swarming about, and then do that in slow motion video. It would look great. Also it looked quite noisy. The footage didn't have the quality. Sometimes when I'm shooting slow motion video I'm very pleased with it. Other times it just doesn't have that quality. I'm not certain that it's just noise. Perhaps the light levels are very low where I was. I'm on auto ISO, but of course there's no EXIF data with video, so I can't look up retrospectively to see what my ISO was. I have to start making a note of it as I'm filming. Talking of noise, I've just had a picture request come in, and it just says Capercaillie courtship. And I had to stop and think about that. What does that mean? Why didn't they say Capercaillie displaying? Now lots of photographers will have pictures of displaying Capercaillies. It's the main way they get photographed. First of all, you get rogue Capercaillies. It's a fairly common occurrence. A bird will lose all fear of anything, including humans. So it will start to display at humans as if we're another Capercaillie. It will start to attack us as well, start pecking at your legs if you're trying to walk close by it. And they occur fairly frequently, and if they become well known and it gets passed on from one photographer to another, lots of people end up going up there and photographing this rogue Capercaillie. The other way is to do them at the lek or display ground. That's become more difficult now in Scotland because you have to have a licence to be at a lek. I don't know how many licences they issue. It works on a quota basis, so at the start of the year the licensing authorities determine how many licenses for each species that they cover they're going to issue, and then that's per area, per region as well, and they don't publish what that quota is, but my guess is for Capercaillie leks it's either very low or more likely zero. But abroad, Scandinavia, they're quite a common bird, and there'll be a lot more opportunities to do them at the lek. So most Capercaillie pictures are displaying birds. And if I send those in, which I will, but I'm going to have lots of competition. Courtship, that implies the females there as well. That's more difficult because female Capercaillies only come into the lek very early in the morning when it's still really dark. Very hard to see them, let alone photograph them. Anyway, let's look at my Capercaillie folder and see what I've got. So I keep each species in its own folder. So we have one for Capercaillie, and these are all the thumbnails. Now most of these pictures are displaying, and this is a very typical display. The spread out tail, head up in the air, and they make this sort of clucking sound. And then somewhere down here we have what I call the flutter jump. Now black grouse have a flutter jump where they just leap up in the air and they call, but they only leap up a few inches. Capercaillie, they can go up as high as a house. It's quite spectacular to watch. These pictures are quite noisy because the light levels were very low. But then I looked through the rest of the folder, and higher up the page there's some pictures with some females which I'd forgotten I'd taken. Now I'm going to move that picture across to my desktop because I don't want to work on it on my master picture disk. I never want to accidentally overwrite it. So it's the second one in, And if we open that up, even on YouTube, I would think you'll be able to see how noisy that picture is. In fact, noise is not an appropriate term, it's pixelated, it's so bad. It's taken on a Canon 1DS Mark II in the year 2007 and at 1600 ISO, and in those days that was very high for an ISO setting. My default, I believe, with that camera was 200 ISO. I didn't like to go higher than that. ISO has gone a long way in the last few years. It was also taken at 1/60th of a second. Now, if you notice, all of my files have got a unique name. It's got Capercaillie with a number, so I can go to my RAW folders and I can find the RAW file for that picture. And then we're going to RAW process it again, but using the latest software that I'm now using, the D/O Pure RAW. I've been talking about this in my video films just recently. What I like about it is how automated it is. You just run it. You don't have to start tweaking any settings. So we'll just open that one file. We then process the photos. This is the latest version, and I have now taken off the lens sharpening since I last demonstrated this. And we process it. And these files are not as huge as my Sony A1 file, so it actually doesn't take very long. But normally I'm doing this in batch mode, perhaps 100 pictures at the same time, and I just leave it running in the background. And it just automatically changes things for you. I have it set so it changes it to an Adobe RAW file, a DNG file. I open that up in Photoshop and just tweak the levels as I normally would. But then look at the startling difference between the two. The bottom picture, the noise has disappeared. It has far more clarity, far more detail in the feathers, and it's just such an automated process. I don't have to make any decisions. There's no sliders to move, nothing to tweak. I've always kept the RAW files as well as a JPEG of every image that I keep, but I've always wondered why, because I've hardly ever used them. There's about 6 files that I've ever reprocessed. But now I'm glad I have kept them, because I could end up reprocessing all of my files. It makes such a difference. Thanks for watching.